Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for connecting on time on this Friday morning. Really nice to see all of you. So we are still going to give it a couple more minutes, just waiting for a few more people to join in, and we'll probably start in about 3 to 5 minutes, if that's okay. Okay, so in the meantime, if you are here, if you need to grab yourself a coffee or grab yourself some paper and pen, it's going to be quite a jam-packed, insightful session as well. So you can use this time to do that, okay? And if you're here, just let me know in the chat that you're with us. Drop me a hi so I know that you are real and not a bot as well, okay? So we'll start in a couple more minutes. Hey, for those who have just joined in, welcome to today's session on structuring presentation content with AI. As mentioned, we're just going to be giving it a couple more minutes, maybe 2 minutes or so, just waiting for a few more to join in, and then we will be starting shortly, okay? All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for connecting on time today, and welcome to today's session on structuring presentation content with AI. My name is Raz, and I will be conducting this session today. Now, AI, as we all know, is the latest buzzword out there, and if you don't believe me, all you need to do is to log onto LinkedIn, and you will be greeted with streams of AI and whether or not it's taking over humans and whether or not we should be worried in the first place. Now, the truth is, as we all know, everyone is starting to use AI, but only a few are actually maximizing it. So the real value isn't in using it to write your slides, but what we are hoping to teach today is helping you to think better, helping you to structure your story, surface insights that you might normally miss. And of course, most importantly, as busy executives, we want to ensure that you still sound like you. So today is the first session of our 4-part Power Presentations with AI webinar series. Now, this particular series is designed to help some of our executives to create compelling narratives faster and smarter using AI. And I do see a couple of familiar names here today. Some of you are some of our ex-clients, some of you are clients who we have runs coming up with as well. So really nice to see all of you. And again, thank you all for joining on time today. By the end of this session, you're going to learn how to avoid the most common AI trap that leads to ineffective decks. Number 2, you're going to be uncovering deep insights using ChatGPT's research function. And of course, we're also going to be helping you to build a storyline using our agency's proprietary framework that we use to help our clients sell and present ideas. Okay, so that is what we are going to be covering in the next 60 minutes, or actually 55 minutes. Okay, it's going to be a very jam-packed session. So if you are ready to continue, can you type yes into the chat? So I know that you are here, you are excited, and we're all ready to jump right in. Yes, loving the energy. I don't know if it's a Friday mood, but there's a lot of yes in caps. I love that. Very different from a Monday session, I will say. Okay, so let's jump right into this session. Now, for those of you who have just joined in, as I mentioned earlier, my name is Raz. I usually don't like to go on and on about myself and my background because not very important. Today is not about me. It is about you, the learner, and what you are going to take away from this session, okay? All you need to know is that here at HighSpark, I am a senior trainer. I lead the curriculum development, and I've been in this business of communicating for over a decade now. And here at HighSpark, we help change makers communicate better with visual stories as well, okay? And yeah, well, we've trained and coached on communications, which is our area of expertise. So I can very confidently say that you will be taking away some value for sure, regardless of your industry, because that is the beauty of our framework. It also lies in its versatility. So today, we're not really going to be outsourcing all of our work to AI, but rather we're going to be learning how to make it work for you, okay? So how to supercharge it. And because we know that everyone loves a good freebie, at the end of today, we're going to be sharing our free AI presentation cheat sheet. Now, this contains an actionable two-step workflow designed for executives, like I mentioned earlier, across any industry. Okay, so this is something that you can use immediately, literally plug and play after today's session. So yes, I would say this one is worth sticking around for. We will be sharing it at the end of today's session. Now, before we go any further, I want to understand your workflow a little bit better so that, I'm sure that everything that we are sharing later is going to be highly relevant for you. And just for me to get an understanding, let's do a quick pulse check. Can you drop into the chat? How many hours do you typically spend on creating a presentation? Again, this is a no judgment zone, all right? It's just for us to know. How many hours do you think you spend on creating one presentation deck? Take some time to reflect. And then I'd like to invite you to drop it into the chat. Okay, we've got some fast fingers here. Zep says 10 plus hours. Freya, hi Freya, 1 to 2 days. Okay, we've got 2 to 3 hours, at least 1 day. Okay, Rosa, thanks for the honesty. 2 days, haha, zero creativity. Okay, Lynette mentioned 8 hours. Wow, Nick is very fast as well, 2 to 3 hours, nice. What about the rest of you? Take some time and you can type it into the chat. I think there's quite a large range. Some of us start off from as little as a couple of hours, like what Nick mentioned, and then a few others across 1 day or sometimes even across 2 days. So if you have taken that time to reflect, now studies do show that most professionals spend anywhere between actually 6 to 15 hours just building an average length deck. Okay, so this is on design, structure, wordsmithing. All right, so most professionals spend around there. And again, of course, this depends on your length of your deck, the complexity. If you have a lot of charts, a lot of technical information, all of this will vary. In fact, I think one of you also mentioned, yeah, it might even take a week depending on the subject. Exactly. So it really depends on the complexity of it. Now, so that is actually the crazy part because it's not the content per se that slows us down, but a lot of times it is the uncertainty. And I don't know how many of you can relate to this because you open up your PowerPoint presentation and you're not sure where to start, or you don't know how to structure it. You don't know what your audiences are looking for example. And that is actually one of the first challenges that we're going to be solving today, which is how to go from chaos to clarity in a faster manner. And of course, we are going to be touching on some AI tools for today. So let me know. You can either feel free to annotate on screen using your stamp tool, or you could also type the number into the chat box. Now, rate your proficiency level using AI tools to create presentations. So it could be somewhere from 1 to 5, maybe you don't use it as much or you're not very sure. Somewhere at 5, maybe you try occasionally, but still learning. And if you are highly proficient, of course, feel free to type that into the chat as well. Okay, so rate your proficiency level in using these tools to create presentations. Okay, let's see, we have 4. Okay, I see Roshni mentioned 4 and then 3. Okay, so quite a few of you, I would say, center around 5 and below. All right, Sharon as well. Okay, thanks, Wenhao. So this is quite good information for us to know, because to be very honest, when you go into LinkedIn or when you talk to corporate executives, a lot of them mention how familiar they are with AI. And this might sometimes give that impression that a lot of us are experts at AI, right? But I think some of us mentioned, well, Rosa said -8. It's a very specific number, -8. Yes, thanks for sharing as well. This is really interesting because it's good. I think a bulk of us have tried it already, but I know that deep down in our hearts, we know that there is way more that we can be doing with it. And as I've seen, many professionals dabble with AI, but very few use it in a very strategic manner. And AI can give you content, but it cannot give you that clarity. It doesn't know your audience. It doesn't know your business. That is where you come in. So before we start looking at the solutions and the prompting, it's important for us to identify the gaps and where most people go wrong. This is actually why 90% of AI presentations fail. And it's not because AI is wrong, but it's because people stop thinking once they start prompting. We think that if we just put in a generic prompt, everything that AI comes up with, we're just going to take it and run with it. And yes, AI is amazing at producing, but to be very honest, it's not that good at thinking critically without that guidance. So it is fantastic at giving you content, structure, headline, but whether or not it is the right ones, whether or not it really hits the nail on the head, that absolutely depends on the way you prompt it. And what happens is we end up with decks that look really smart, but they don't quite say anything new. Let me give you an example of what I mean. So take a look at this slide, and you can take a minute to just kind of absorb it. And I'd like you to type into the chat, what do you think is not very effective about this slide? What is ineffective about this particular slide? Let's see if anyone can spot it. There are quite a few areas, okay? So take some time, can take a minute or so to absorb it first. And then you can type into the chat. Okay, let's take another 30 seconds. And take a look at it. I see some answers already. I'm going to give it a little bit more time. Try to think from a critical perspective. Okay, this is the most important muscle that we are going to be sharpening as well. What do you think is not effective about this slide? Okay, so we've got quite a few answers. Let's take a look at what some of you say. So Joji mentioned too much focus on illustration. Small prints, and then points are generic, looks polished, but feels like it's lacking. Yeah, very good. So Freya and Lynette got it right. It's actually general descriptive words, but it's not really telling you anything. It's very generic, right? And in fact, I think, Sab, you mentioned second line is just rephrased from the first line for each point. Exactly. If you notice in this particular slide, all of your elaborations, so I'm talking about these ones, right? They are actually not really adding value to the subheader at all. So if you say unlock access, okay, thousands of customer, gain insights, gain powerful insights, and then explore new product possibilities, explore innovative opportunities. So it's pretty repetitive, it's pretty generic. It's not really telling you anything that you need to know, right? So the thing about this is that is one of the dead giveaway that it's written by AI, because it is telling you something, but it's not really telling you anything very useful. Okay, and let's dive a little bit deeper into this. So the copy on this slide, of course, is 100% churned by AI. And you don't really have a lot of credibility. You don't have specifics. As many of you have mentioned, it looks polished, but it's not really saying anything impactful. Looks smart, but doesn't say much. This is basically what happens if you type into your ChatGPT or any other tool. You say, make me a slide about unlocking business growth, or make me a slide about business growth. You get something that it looks polished, but it's basically like empty calories, right? And it's really easy these days to churn out fluff with zero impact. So let's look at it from a more critical lens. If we dive deeper into your headline, it's very generic, right? It sounds big, it sounds visionary, wow, unlocking the future of business growth. But honestly, what does that actually mean? What are we unlocking it with? Growth in which direction? Or when we talk about future, do we mean next quarter, or do we mean next decade or next century? It really could go in any direction. These are the types of titles. They sound profound until someone asks that follow-up question. Then that leaves the person, you start to stammer, you start to worry and wonder, actually, what do I mean with these exact words? And then we move on to the repetitive words, right? You will see that we always have the usual suspects. Unlock access, you have drive impact, empower change, accelerate innovation. And at the end of the day, what do any of these even mean in a very specific term? What do these mean to your organization? What do these mean to your audiences as well? Okay, so vague buzzwords, right? And again, same thing, you've got very fluffy headers, surface level intelligent. It looks right until you try to present it. And overall, you can tell, I think one of you mentioned, a lot of focus is on the slide design, but the story doesn't really work. At the end of the day, it is information without intention. So let's take another look at a very similar slide. It's the exact same slide, but when we prompt, when we dive deeper, then we are able to get specific insights. For example, you can already see, right, when you say instant access to a customer network, what are we talking about? We are talking about customer connections. We are talking about X number of SMEs. Across where? Across APAC. Or if we talk about real-time market intelligence, what do we mean? If we talk about innovating faster, what do we mean? So in this particular case, there are very specific benefit first phrasing. You have got, of course, at the end of the day, depending on your business, you can make it highly relevant. If I were to put it side by side, on the left, when you allow AI to just create on its own, you will get a bunch of words for sure, but does it actually make sense? That is something to think about. When you guide AI, you give it the clarity, you give the flow, the persuasion, you get a very different result. Because AI doesn't think strategically, right? Obviously, you do. Your role is to teach it how to think. So when we summarize it, if I were to sum it up, it comes down to 3 pointers on why AI presentations fail. Number one, no substance, meaning very generic claims. No data, no insight. When you don't do that research, you're not going to have substance. Number two, no structure. You've got great ideas, but it's kind of all over the place, right? It's like you take your thoughts, you throw them into a blender, and then, here's your deck, right? So you've got good ideas, but it lacks that logical flow. It lacks that structure. And of course, lastly, there is no story, no clear journey. It informs, but maybe it lacks that influence. So yes, AI can give you content, but without insights, without structure, it is just going to be noise at the end of the day. And this is largely why a majority of AI presentations fail. The good news is it's not that AI cannot do better. It's because most people use it at a very surface level. We type in one vague prompt and we expect, wow, an amazing amount of strategic insights to fall out. What we're going to be going into next is what happens if we teach AI to think deeper. And that is exactly what we're getting into next. Now, at this point, I want to clarify a very common misconception, which is different tools specialize in different areas. A lot of you may have heard about presentation builders. So if I'm talking about slide designs, right? So like beautiful.ai or gamma.app, these are tools that can help you design these presentations. They can help you to present them. But this is very different from insight generation. So generation is not the same as presentation. Presentation builder tools, they can't tell you why your idea works, or they can't help you structure it, but they can present that idea in a very visually compelling way. Okay, and this is what we're going to be covering in our next webinar, but I'll jump into that. Insight generation is when you use tools to dig, to explore, to connect dots, and to surface that meaning. So you take that raw gold and you shape it into a story. That is essentially your insight generation. Okay, but insight presentation is you are going to design it, you are going to piece it together. So tools like ChatGPT's deep research, they can actually scan global trends, they can summarize reports, and they can help you to pull those insights in just a couple of minutes. So in this session, we're going to be focusing on that. And if I were to give you an overview, this is our end-to-end workflow for creating presentations with AI. Number one, most importantly, of course, it starts with research. This is where you use AI to identify opportunities, risks, or insights that you may have missed. So this is more of your thinking assistant. All right, I want you to think of it as your thinking assistant, not your writing one yet. Once you have all your research in play, then you are going to move on to structure. Now, this is where I'm going to be sharing with you our own 5P consulting framework. This will help you to make sense of all of that raw information. So you decide what's important, what is the flow, what is the story that needs to be told. And then lastly, we move on to design. This is where we bring that information to life in a visual way. So we use tools like gamma.app. Okay, but like I said, that's a whole other webinar. Trust me, you want to catch that one as well. Okay, so that is for next month. For today, we are going to be focusing on the first two aspects, just the content. So research, as well as structuring your thoughts together. And I want you to think about it this way. I know before this, we are all very used to, I can just do my own research, right? I go into Google, I do a bunch of research. But think about it. Before AI, you might have spent hours, 1 or 2 hours, Googling reports, reading them, pulling snippets from PDFs, maybe from McKinsey, maybe from Bain & Co., or maybe your poor intern does it for you, right? However, now, with the right prompting, ChatGPT can actually do that groundwork for you. It can even cite sources. And what that means is that you walk into your next meeting, not just with slides, but with substance behind that slide. And I'm going to give you a real life corporate example on how we can use it. Okay, so I'm going to take a pause here. I know I have shared quite a little bit. Are we all still aligned? Yes. Anyone has any confusions? If you are aligned, let me know in the chat. Just type yes, so I know we are ready to move on. And we can jump into the next portion on research. If you have any questions as well, now is also a good time, or any concerns, objections, feel free to let me know as well, okay? Okay, fantastic. So we are ready to dive into the first hot tip, which is, of course, using ChatGPT's deep research tool. So let's start with a very simple topic. Okay, let's say you want to convince your leadership to invest in AI training. See, very meta, right? We are doing AI training and you want to convince them to also invest in it. So let's see how we can use ChatGPT to uncover these insights first. And then step 2, later on, we're going to turn it into a persuasive narrative. So step 1 first. What's going to happen is you are going to use ChatGPT's deep research prompt or deep research tool. Now, you will need to give it detailed prompts. So deep research works best with detailed prompts. Later on, I will be sharing the cheat sheet and that will contain a prompt, but of course you can build on it to make it more detailed. And in this example, I have just said that, okay, I want ChatGPT to act as a strategy consultant. My company is considering investing in AI training. So what I need it to do is to act as my assistant, summarize trends, benchmarks, case studies on how organizations are upskilling staff in AI. And of course, you can also get it to share with you the sources, the resources, and cite that information, because sometimes, ChatGPT does have a tendency to hallucinate. So you want to make sure that you indicate, please ensure that the claims can be verified from credible sources. This is important. And also, I want to make a disclaimer here. Please do not paste your company's confidential numbers into ChatGPT. Okay, obviously you can't do that. Instead, we're going to be using it as a research assistant to scan what is happening in the wider industry. And then you will get a snapshot in minutes. So it's like a research accelerator, all right? But of course, you still need to check the sources. You still need to do your due diligence. It's going to do the heavy lifting for you, however. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on the plus sign and you will select the deep research function. I also want to mention this is not the premium account. This is free for all. As long as you have a ChatGPT account, which is free, you should be able to use this tool. All right. And once you click on it, it is going to ask you a follow-up question. So this is quite interesting because you notice that ChatGPT comes back with clarifying questions, because my original prompt, well, maybe it was quite broad, right? And this is not a bug, this is a feature. It's telling you, hey, I need more context to give you something useful. If you don't provide it with that context, it will give you more generic information. Okay, so what you want to do is to build that prompt strongly from the start. And then when it asks you follow-up questions, you can, of course, build on it. All right. So what is the size? What am I focused on? What regions should, the benchmarks and case studies focus on? All right. So then you will change it. And once you have put it in, deep research takes a couple of minutes. It's not as instant as your typical ChatGPT tool. All right. So it is more of it takes a couple of minutes because it's really combing the internet. It's combing all of the sources to provide you with the insights. And what it's going to come up with is something like this. So don't be afraid of this. I know it looks very overwhelming. It is going to be in a long report format. This is crucial. This is good. You want all of the information first, and then you can trim the fat. So you can already see there's quite a lot of key points over here. All right, so let me break it down. I'll just zoom it in a little bit. So first things first, you can see that APAC financial firms are accelerating AI use. And then your second pointer is that obviously, when you upskill in AI, you get strong ROI, you get strong productivity gains, you have a role-specific content integration, and you also have the risk. What happens if my company does not invest in AI at this point? Okay, so a lot of things, it's pretty loaded. Okay, so what I'm going to do, you can see that quite a lot of information, all right? And let's test something out. I've extracted 3 angles from this particular report, and I want you to type into the chat. If you had to present this to your leadership team next week, which angle would you go with? Number 1, APAC firms are scaling AI faster than ever. Number 2, AI upskilling is the new ROI multiplier. Or number 3, without AI training, firms risk falling behind. So if you were to present it, what would you go with? And you can type it into the chat. So interestingly, I see pretty much everyone has said number 2. I'm quite curious why. Maybe Zeb, do you want to share with us, or you can type into the chat or unmute yourself? Why would you pick number 2? Create urgency. Okay, so Zeb mentioned more positive messaging. All right. And then Sharon mentioned number 3, maybe more of creating that urgency. Yeah. So it depends on your audience. Some people, they may prefer a more of a threat, you know, hey, if we don't do this, our company will fall behind. So we have that FOMO effect. Some of us, I think a majority of us focus more on number 2, which is a more positive approach. And the truth is, it really depends, right? Like what I think what some of you mentioned, it really depends on your audience. It depends on the type of messaging that they appeal to, right? And it could be number 1, maybe it works for CEO, right? Because it's focusing more on growth, it's focusing more on expansion. Number 2, maybe more of finance, for example, right? Because we're talking about ROI, we're talking about efficiency. And number 3 could be more, like I said, if your boss is very worried, very nervous, you know, in Singlish, we say very kanchong, right? Then you might want to do number 3 because, oh, if we don't jump on this, we're going to fall behind. But unless you have that structure, you're never going to know which one to lead with, or you're never going to know how to connect them into a clear story. So the truth is the insight doesn't change. What changes is how you structure it. And this is where most people, they have the insights, but they stop there and they wonder why it doesn't land. Because it's not about having more insights, but it is about choosing the right angle. Let me give you a visual description of what I mean. When you have all of this information, these are still scattered points, right? But that structure, that story is what turns that scattered data into a message that people remember. Most people gather great data. We are all subject matter experts. You have so much information, but you dump it into a slide without that clear flow. And as a result, your audience cannot follow that story. So how do you find that angle every time? That is where your structure comes in. So far, I think it's pretty straightforward. We have gone through using ChatGPT's deep research tool that is going to allow you to get your information, a depth of information, if I may add, get that in a couple of minutes. At this point, you have all of the information. We need to move on into structuring it. So this is where I'm going to be touching on our 5P framework that we use, coupled with ChatGPT, of course. So we're going to use both hand in hand to work together. Now, once you have a clear framework, you can take any pile of insights and you can turn it into a narrative that makes sense for any audience. Because yes, AI helps you generate insights, but structure helps you to sell them. Okay, so I want to talk about our 5P story structure. Now, this is a blueprint that you can always fall back on no matter the topic. And I'm going to quickly breeze through what this means, and then I'll give you a more detailed real-life example of how to use it. So the 5P or 5 pitch story structure, it has 5 steps. And how it works is you're going to want to start your presentation with number 1, the premise. Now, your premise is basically your context, the why behind your idea. This is where you want to share things like your problem or your opportunity. So earlier on, if you remember, I shared with you the 3 slides, the 3 angles. That would have been your premise. Once you set that, hey, there is a need for this particular solution, then we go into your proposition, which is your big idea. What is the big overarching solution? Then we move on to plan, which is where you're going to share smaller components, your details, share how it works. Now, I've been doing this for years, and at this point, I can confidently tell you the most common mistake I see across executives is they tend to start off with the plan. We will say, oh, we have a new initiative. This is what it does. This is the feature 1, feature 2, feature 3. But we fail to create that use case. We fail to create that need in the minds of our audiences. We don't even tell them, hey, this is important. You need to listen why this is important. Then I'll tell you how it works, right? So important for you to start off with your why. Once you have gone through your premise, your proposition, your plan, then you move on to your promise, which is the expected outcomes or the potential results. And then lastly, of course, you end off with your permission. Also important, you don't want to just end off with thank you, any questions. What is the action step that you want them to take? And again, action step could be very different. For some people, it could be giving you budget. For some people, it could be just agreeing to the second meeting. For some people, it could be, okay, no action. Everything is going in the right direction, but I need your approval. I need your assurance. So that call to action, it could be very different depending on your industry and your role. Okay. In a nutshell, this is your 5P story structure. And this is our consulting framework that we use across our clientele to turn that complexity into clarity. And I'm going to show you how exactly this looks like in slides. So let me use a real life example. Now, this is obviously sanitized, but this is previously what this company's slides used to look like, okay, before 5P. So you would see there is an overview, and then you've got value offerings, you've got a lot of other random slides like milestones, and of course they ended off with that thank you slide. So many slides, but these are just some examples of what these slides used to look like. And the key message in this case, it is actually buried, right? It's not really very clear, it doesn't stand out, and it's not suited to our attention span. As you all know, human being attention span is really decreasing day by day. If any of you are on TikTok, you will know we only have a few precious seconds where we want to pay attention. So if you're going to be overwhelming your audiences with a whole bunch of information, and if you're going to be making them do the work by finding out what is the key information, that is of course not ideal. So in this particular example, even though the data and the information is there, without the storyline, the messaging gets lost. So what we're going to do is we're going to tap on this 5P story structure, and we'll use the same example. So it's a manufacturing company, right? We're going to use the same thing, and we'll see if it's easier to follow through. Starting off with my premise. So let's say I am presenting this deck to my clients. I'm going to start off by saying that there is a gap between manufacturers. There's a gap between equipment manufacturers and component manufacturers. And the biggest bottleneck in this particular industry is not the technology. We've got loads of that, but it's the disconnect between components and the overall equipments. And this is our big idea. My company, we connect equipment and component makers. What this does is it helps in faster and smarter innovation. We accelerate that connection. So again, you can see it is a big idea. I'm not going into details yet. I'm just sharing with you what exactly is the overarching idea. This is our proposition. And then we move on to plan, right? So what do we do? What exactly are the features that we do? How do we keep the supply chains moving? And then your promise, unlocking access to a wide range of components. You can expect reduced procurement by X%. And lastly, your call to action, which is the permission. So let's create tomorrow's solutions together. So can you see the difference? The first one that I shared, the original one, is really just a bunch of information. You're not really certain what is the story. And this is one of the largest reasons as to why these presentations, they end up being very drab. They end up being very overwhelming. And at the end of it, people are sitting there thinking, okay, well, what was the purpose of that presentation? So when you follow a certain structure like this makes it very easy for your audiences to follow through. And like I said, attention span these days, you have to make it easy for them. If that barrier is very high, they're not going to want to listen. They're not going to want to give you that buy-in. Okay, so just to recap again, you want to start off with your premise. Your premise is your why. Let them know why there is even a need for this particular solution. If you don't give them the why, they're not going to give you that buy-in as well. So your premise, and then you have your big idea, which is your proposition. Again, don't overwhelm them with the details yet, just the overarching key idea. Then you've got your plan, which is where your features, your smaller components come in. And then, like I said earlier, your promise for your results. And lastly, your permission. Okay, so I've just gone through the 5P story structure. I hope that we are all aligned, not very confused. So let's do a little bit of a pulse check. On screen, you will see that there is an idea. Okay, so a 4-day work week drives higher productivity and happier teams. This is the proposition, the big idea. Now, can you help me type into the chat, okay? What do you think would be a premise for this particular proposition? So imagine you are pitching this to your boss. You know, I don't know how many of you here want a 4-day work week. I think every one of us want it. I think my boss is also in this chat. So, 4-day work week, right? So you can type into the chat, if you are pitching this idea to your boss, what would be a premise that you are sharing? What would be that why behind this particular idea? So let's take a minute for you to think about it. And then I'd like to invite you to type it into the chat. And I'll play some music while you have a think about it in the meantime. Let's take a couple more seconds for you to think about it. Again, your goal is for you to make your leadership or your team care about why this change is needed. Okay, so I think we have some answers in, but yeah, let's wait for a couple more. Okay, take some time. And what would your premise be for this particular proposition? Now, this is a great practice for us to sharpen that muscle where you're trying to make people see that there is a need for that solution. All right, so let's take another 30 seconds or so for you to quickly type into the chat. Okay, so let's see what are some of the responses that we have and what are the premises that we've come up with. So Joji mentioned work-life balance, definitely. If I'm going to pitch this to my boss, I want to share about how we can attract new talents, or what are some of the cons as well, right? So lost team communication, performance review. And then Andrew mentioned longer hours causing burnout. Does 5-day work week still work? Andrew, speaking from experience. Yes, definitely. So it could be a fact that, hey, longer hours are causing burnout. Therefore, a 4-day work week could drive higher productivity, for example. And then we've also got data-driven approaches. That is great. So starting off with the statistics to help you to build that case, that could be excellent. And then Lynette mentioned more competitors are doing it. Yes, we are losing good staff to competitors, right? So that's good. And Sharon mentioned drop in engagement score. Nice. And then you've got your feedback. And the insights from our new, maybe younger employees as well. So this is great, all right? What this is telling me is that you are understanding the idea of the 5P story structure, which is excellent. And again, you can see that this is a very clear premise. You are building that case first, making it more compelling. Because let me tell you, one of the biggest mistakes in business storytelling is a lot of times we jump straight to the solution without first setting up why it matters. And you can see just from the chat itself, when you have the right premise, immediately your proposal becomes a lot more powerful. Now your audience is more likely to listen and to buy in. All right. And again, this is just the first step. Of course, in our full workshop, we cover the entire process and we go through structured ways to build every different type of business story, depending on your industry as well. Okay. So what we've gone through so far is the idea of bridging that gap in half the time. So you've got the 5P framework and you've got ChatGPT, but ChatGPT is not going to magically know this framework, right? Obviously, you need to teach it like you're onboarding a junior consultant. So you need to prompt smart in order for you to get smart outputs. So I mentioned this earlier. What you want to avoid is a lazy one-liner, like, help me write a report on topic X. Then you hit enter. Right? And then you get frustrated at the results and we say, oh, AI is not for me, you know, things like that. So you have to make sure that you have smart prompts. If you see Patrick on the left, when you have strong inputs, you get crystal clear outputs. And same thing, right? On the other end, if it's shallow, you're not going to get a good output. So what you want to do is to share the role with ChatGPT. So you want to make sure that you give it a clear expert role. You define the task as well. What is the scope? Do you want it to research, compare, or analyze? And lastly, what is the output, right? Do you want it in a table form? Do you want it in bullet points? Whichever it is. So here what I have is I've just told my ChatGPT that I want it to act as a management consultant and then use the 5P story structure to organize this report into a presentation outline. So remember earlier on, we had that huge report on convincing our leaders to incorporate AI into our employee training, right? And then you can see that I'm teaching it. Here is what the 5Ps mean. Very quick, very short, right? So set the context, you know, proposition, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm also clear on the number of slides. So if I were to break this one down, giving it clarity on number one, the role, number two, your scope and teach, and number three, clarifying that output. How many slides do you want? You need to tell it how to respond. Otherwise, it's just going to respond however it wants. Okay, so this is very important. You are the boss. And again, prompt quality really differs. This one versus this one. It's like, I want you to think about it. If you go to a coffee shop and you say, oh, I want coffee, you're going to get whatever, anything. But if you say, I want a double shot oat milk latte, extra hot, of course, you are far more likely to get exactly what you need, right? So you need to prompt smart so that you get that smart input. All right. So let's do a little bit of a test. And I want you to take a look at these three options. Which one is most likely to produce a clear, persuasive output for your senior leaders? Number one, create a 10-slide presentation on AI training. Number two, prepare a leadership presentation that includes ROI, competitor benchmarks, and call to action. And number three, act as a strategy consultant. So can you type into the chat, A, B, or C? What do you think would give you the clearest output when you are preparing that presentation? So I think it's quite clear. Most of you have typed C into the chat. Yes, that is correct. Because C, of course, gives you all of the focus. It gives you the scope, and it's a proven structure as well. Right? So when I type this into ChatGPT, I give it the whole report, as well as I teach it the 5P story structure. So two-step, it's going to come out with the entire slide outline for me. So for example, under my premise, you can see why AI isn't coming. It's already reshaping finance. You've got your proposition, you've got your plan, what are we planning to do? You've got your promise, okay? So 20% productivity gains, upskilling talent, right? And lastly, what next? Waiting costs more than acting. What are the next steps? So do you see how compelling this output really is? And again, this is going to take me a couple of minutes. I just have to make sure I put all of my clear inputs in, and it comes out with such a compelling presentation. From here on, it is going to be super easy because you've already done the heavy lifting. You've done the research, you've done the structure. What we're going to go into next would be the design aspect. All right. And you've got your research, your structure. Now for the design magic, this is an example of what some of the slides could look like. Again, this is something, just a very brief overview. If I'm using the same topic where I want to get my leaders to, give buy-in into this AI training idea. But again, of course, I want to let you know that this is reserved for our next webinar, which is happening in November as well. So that is where you get to really unlock that design magic, okay? And this is going to be our next webinar. Again, I want to say it's also completely free as well, all right? And where you will be transforming content into slides fast. So this is going to be conducted by Christine. Christine, you can say hi, wave at the camera. Yeah, so she's going to be conducting it on how do we transform our content into design, again, using AI tools in half the time. All right. And if you are interested to deepen your mastery further, now I know that a lot of you here are our past clients, and it's excellent. It's so nice to see all of you. But if today's session did spark some ideas, I want to let you know that our Gen AI courses do take it a step further from just understanding it to actually building it into your daily workflows. And if this session left you thinking, okay, you know what? I need more of this in my life. Well, the great news is we've got a full Gen I course built right around this. And again, the most powerful executives of the future, they are going to know how to blend all of these timeless principles with today and tomorrow's cutting edge tools. So this executive is going to use AI to work smarter, but still have that empathy and persuasion and clarity. And this is in essence the foundation of our Gen AI Executive Series, where we have hard skills and they meet these human skills. And we're talking about whether you want to use it for creative marketing, so you get to become that ultimate marketing machine, or whether if you are a corporate executive, how do you use it to improve your workflow? So that's basically a deep dive into today's session. All right, so what we've covered today is more for the corporate executive, how to incorporate that into your workflow, but we do have other options as well. So basically, if I were to summarize everything, today we have showed you what is possible. The course and the workshop is where we teach you how to make it repeatable. We teach you how to make it something that you can easily integrate into your workflow. All right. So if you are interested, you can feel free to join the waiting list, or you can also reach out to our training account manager. Justine is here in the chat as well. All right. So feel free. Of course, we do have a webinar exclusive. You do get a 5% discount for the first 5 who sign up for this as well. Okay. So I'm going to take a pause here. I know that I might have some questions. And we've got about 5 more minutes before I share the link for our presentation cheat sheet that I mentioned at the beginning of today. But let me take a pause. Any questions? Please feel free to type into the chat, or if you would like to unmute yourself, you can do so as well. Okay, so I have a question, which is, how do you recommend going about the earlier exercise if the report you are using is internal and the information is not publicly available? Okay, this is a really great question. Very, very common thing. A lot of us deal with confidential information. Like I said earlier, you don't want to put in the confidential information, but when we are using ChatGPT's deep research tool, you are using it to supplement the research that you may already have. So if you have a certain report, maybe you have it from your internal dashboard, right? And it's not publicly available. You can use ChatGPT's deep research tool to then build on it to support that information, number one. Number two, how do you use it to craft your structure? What I would recommend and what I have seen has worked successfully is you don't share the confidential information, but you just share the overarching idea. Then you plug it in. In fact, you can even tell ChatGPT, I have this topic, I'm not able to share confidential information, so leave a placeholder for it, but can you craft the outline based on blah, blah, blah topic, whatever it is? Okay, so this is a great question. If you have confidential information, it doesn't mean that you can't use AI. It just means that you have to be a little bit more careful and a bit more conscious with what you are telling ChatGPT or any other AI tool that you use. All right, so I hope that I have answered that question. Okay, let me know if I have. And if you have any other questions, feel free to type it into the chat as well. Okay, thank you. Okay, let me see. Rosa mentioned, oh, so happy to hear, Rosa, that it's insightful. The prompt is new. I know. I don't know how many of you here have been screaming at ChatGPT in caps lock. I know, been there, done that, because it just feels like it's just not getting you. But I agree, right? So all you need to do is to fine tune that prompt. If you forget anything else, remember Patrick over here, right? Strong inputs, you're going to get a great output. If you have shallow inputs, you are going to also get a shallow output. Okay, so good to hear that. It has been insightful. And I do want to, I know we have about 4 minutes left, so I want to take this time for you to get that presentation workflow cheat sheet. Now on screen, I have also shared a QR code. How you're going to get this cheat sheet is you're going to help me to scan the QR code and complete a very short feedback form. So you can leave your testimonials there as well. And that's going to help us to know what works, whether or not this has been useful for you. Because like I said, this is just session 1 of our 4-part webinar series. Okay, so your feedback, your thoughts, your opinion, this is going to help us to further improve the upcoming runs as well. All right, so at the same time, before any of you drop off, I just want to take this time to say thank you so much for joining me on this Friday morning. Okay, I hope that it has been a useful session for you. And thanks so much for being very engaged in the chat as well. It has been a pleasure. I will also be sharing my contact on screen afterwards, but I believe you probably would have my email from the link as well. So if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. And of course, if you are interested in the customized run for your team, feel free to reach out to Justine. I'm just going to quickly share her page as well. And yeah, no obligations. We can have a chat, see what works for you and whether it is something that would be useful for you as well. Okay, so before we end off today's session, I'm just going to leave this on screen. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the chat. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining today, and I hope you have a great Friday and weekend ahead. Thank you. So feel free to also leave your testimonials if you have. We may reach out to some of you separately, so we'll see how that works, yeah? And I also want to leave my contact on screen. If you have any questions, feel free to, I've got my email there, so feel free to just email me. And my LinkedIn is also there. I do share tips occasionally, all right? All for free, don't worry, just to hopefully help. So feel free to connect with me and let's stay connected. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Christine, for sharing my LinkedIn in the chat. So I'm just going to leave it on this page. If you are struggling to scan the QR code, let us know in the chat as well. We are here to help, yeah? Right. Thanks so much, Denise. Thanks, Linus. Have a great weekend. And for those of you who are still sticking around, if you have any other questions, feel free to drop it into the chat or to let me know as well. And we do hope to see you at our next webinar, which will be conducted by Steve. This is part 2 of our webinar series. So don't worry, we will be sending you a follow-up with all of the details. Yeah, that's also going to be something you don't want to miss, definitely. So hope to see you then as well. Thank you, Andrew. Have a good one. Thanks, Zeb. Thanks, Minhao. Thanks, RF. Hope it was useful. Have a good one.